Hey, Low Code Approach listeners, this is Wendy Haddad. Before we jump into this week's episode, I wanted to let you know that we are starting to plan for the next season, and we want to make sure we hear from you on what is most important and relevant in terms of the topics that we'll be choosing. So if you could open a web browser and pop over to aka.ms/low code topic request, that's aka.ms/low code topic request, all one word. Fill out that brief survey on what topics and what subjects, what guests you might want to hear from. And who knows, maybe it'll make it into the next season of the podcast. Thanks so much and happy listening.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of the Low Code Approach. I'm Sean Feeney, a Senior Product Marketing Manager of the Power Platform team, and I'm joined by...
I'm Wendy Haddad. I'm a Senior Cloud Solution Architect, Delivery Lead, and a former Microsoft customer. And I am joined by...
Ken Dillard, Principal Program Manager with the Power Platform, and let me just say, Hurricane aficionado like our guest. Sean, who do we have with us today?
Well, just in the nick of time, we've got Nick Miller with us, a Senior Solution Architect. Hey now, Ken, I'm doing puns. Hey Nick, how's it going? How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me in.
Awesome. So we wanted to talk a little bit about your time in the field, working with customers, building solution, building content of various sorts for them, and kind of where you found success and how you found working with them. And so let's actually dive back into tell us more about yourself. How did you get started in Microsoft Power Platform?
Sure. Started my journey back in 2017. Well, actually 2007, back at the Department of Veterans Affairs Medical Center years ago, with this whole brand new thing called SharePoint. From there,
Never heard of it.
right? Never heard of it. From there, self-taught InfoPath guru, right? Workflow designer, SharePoint, building all kinds of neat things on that side. Fast forward to mid 2010s when the life of InfoPath and SharePoint Designer workflows was documented to go adios, and Power Apps, Power Automate Flow had just come out and said, okay, well, let's take a look at this and see if we can take some of these, what are now going to be legacy, and move them into the Power Platform. In 2017, 2018 is when I really started playing in the Power Platform to replace a number of electronic forms I had built and workflow processes utilizing more modern technologies. And when I came to Microsoft in 2019 as a SharePoint developer, I saw the huge need in Power Platform for engineers and dove in the deep end and never looked back. So since 2019, I've only been Power Platform forever. I've probably forgotten most of what I've learned about SharePoint as an architect for 15 years-ish, but then dove right into the Power Platform and never really looked back after that.
Okay, so Nick, across the board, what Power Platform tools do you develop in most often? And I don't know if this is a fair question, but I'm going to put it to you anyway. Can you pick a favorite?
So most of the customers I deal with everything with the exception of Dynamics. We have a number of them that have Dynamics platforms, and they have, dedicated engineers to kind of help them with that and dedicated teams. But I deal mainly with, Canvas apps, model-driven apps, Dataverse, Power Automate, Copilot Studio. I haven't really played much with Power Pages just because we haven't had any customers that are like, yes, I want to dive into this. I haven't really got a chance to play with that as much as I'd like to, but most of the time it's Canvas apps and dealing with whatever the data source is, and then also building model-driven apps to be able to utilize Dataverse and be able to take some of these old technologies and ideas with using Excel and Access and SharePoint and bringing them into a full-on actual relatable database, or utilizing their databases they already have installed in their on-prem or in the cloud systems, and giving them an easy application to be able to run with. And so quite honestly, I don't know if I can pick a favorite, and I can probably do more with both. Just kind of depends on the situation. Canvas apps, obviously more dynamic than model-driven apps, but from a low-code approach. But then Power Automate, I will jump into that to run an API faster, and I will jumping over to the Graph API, to the Graph Explorer. So.
I know. And Power Automate was where I first got started in the Power Platforms. It's a little bit of a first love, but I've definitely enjoyed branching out from there. So Nick, you and I go back a little bit because we got connected when I first joined Microsoft. And I think before we dive into some of what you're seeing on the field or with our customers, can you explain a little bit more about our role as cloud solution architects, or your role specifically? And what does it mean to be on the field and working with customers, and what kinds of work are you doing right now?
So as a cloud solution architect and customer success unit, we're focused on helping and teaching our customers to build and succeed. So taking concepts that they may have built a couple of years ago, whether they're using a full .NET approach and they're looking to streamline and try to bring things and standardize into a more localized type of application versus having to have a dedicated .NET developer to maintain applications that are on web portals and such, and being able to use things that we're already paying for. Right. So we have licensing. And so helping them get the most bang for their buck. And so I have more of a teaching role than a building role. We build lots of neat things, but I'm hardly the one actually typing on the keyboard. I'll build a proof of concept to kind of proof it out and then be with the customers in some type of hackathon event or go on site or on virtual, whichever. Spend a couple days and actually build the proof of concept together to replace some type of legacy interface, whether it's a manual PDF form that gets liquid signatures and faxed around or emailed to everybody, to diving in and replacing that with a Canvas app and being able to dynamically build a form, use DocuSign or Adobe Sign to be able to electronically sign those forms based on some dynamic method of being able to say, hey, who's my approvers? And kind of go from there. Every customer's a little bit different. A lot of customers still focused in a lot of governance and administration, putting up guardrails. So that's obviously, security being such a huge topic and concern. Want to make sure that they understand all the aspects of Dataverse security model and how data works within the Power Platform and how end users access data, and explaining and making sure that they understand that so they feel comfortable with building those applications and driving success and adoption across their end users for things they already pay for.
So I think that's very interesting. Can you tell me, it sounds like you've helped a lot of customers with low code and so on. What's maybe some of your favorite success stories that you can share?
That's a tough one. One customer, this goes back a couple of years, a customer had reached out. They're a global organization, and one of their North American headquarters was in South Carolina. And they had reached out because they wanted to do a hackathon internally for the Power Platform. And in a true sense, where we have experts, we have teams of people working on different aspects. They have ideas and they bring them to the table. We do a day of kind of like, hey, this is kind of what it is. The nice thing is they'd already done all that. So we had 3 days together in the room to where they had local experts in various different areas of the Power Platform. And they asked me to be there to be the expert when the experts failed. And it was a ton of fun because I was able to dive and focus on projects that they had absolutely no direction on and come away 2 days later with a working, viable product for them to be able to use for their corporate communications. One of the times in that particular hackathon, one of the teams put together a solution utilizing Power BI, embedded Canvas apps, connections to not only Power BI at the time, just data sets, data models, but then also connecting directly to their SQL servers for an application that they use it's a manufacturing company, and that they could actually use these actually on the floor with their frontline workers, along with all the way up to their C-levels and everyone in between. And the goal of this was to replace a third-party application that they were paying close to, I believe, around $200,000, $250,000 a month for this third-party application. And we were able to build a solution to replace that application and had it in production a week later. So that's probably one of my favorite success stories with that particular customer, to be able to take something, take a week kind of together with an idea, pull it into a solution, test it out, make sure it's viable, and then roll it into production. And they had an extra $250,000 a month in their budget for something else. So talk about return on investment. Some other ones are pretty straightforward with fixing everyday kind of things, a contract management system, things that seem small to those of us who built them, but to them it's using Excel and, getting away from using Excel and Access and SharePoint forms, or even access file forms, and making it fully electronic, you actually using a relational database. And we're seeing a lot of those types of builds, taking some legacy ideas and old methodologies and bringing them into using modern technologies. That's pretty much what the customers I've worked with, that's their primary goal, is take old stuff, make it into new, get it off of Lotus Notes and bring it into the Dataverse.
Very cool, Nick. So you've gone over this evolution and you have a lot of experience, where you're going from manual processes over to SharePoint. The next evolution is moving into Power Platform and business modernization. Well, let's talk about the next modernization on that. And that's the inclusion of AI and generative AI. And can you go into any of your experiences when implementing agents into the work that you're doing, or utilizing Copilot in any of the solutions that you're building out?
With the customer builds or even my own builds internally here at Microsoft, Copilot, for me, I'm a big fan of chess. That's why in chess, the pawns go first, right? But the Power Platform, we've had Copilot involved, integrated within the Canvas model, within the editing models since the beginning, right? At no additional cost. So being able to utilize Copilot to either help me build a flow, help me build an app, the concept of generating complex expressions in Power Automate, because I don't memorize that syntax. I don't have the time. So utilizing of Copilot to be able to build things from an expert level, it seems kind of like that's really neat. But where I see the most effect of it is brand new users, right? Even brand new those who have been developers, but they haven't developed on the Power Platform. So being able to ask Copilot a question or to, hey, drop down an idea, and we've got a Dataverse table with a modern controlled Canvas app built up, ready to go just based on natural language query. They find that very helpful to get them on a starting point. So now they can continue to dive in, whether they're using, someone like myself to guide them, or if they're reading through blogs, going through YouTube videos, listening to podcasts on best ways to kind of build and streamline the use of Copilot during that, in the very beginning of initializing was super helpful. And ever since then, it's gotten better. It's only gotten better for them to be able to truly ask it questions on how do I write a formula to query this, and this, and filter by this. And it brings it in, they look at it and ingest it right directly into the function within the items control or something like that within the Canvas apps. For other customers dealing with AI, we have a couple that are well ahead of the curve. They had built their own large language models over in Azure OpenAI and embedded them within Power Virtual Agents. This was a year or two ago before Copilot was announced, before generative AI. And so with that particular customer, we've had to work together with taking the stuff that they built that was in their production environment, utilizing chatbots on their public web portal, their internal web portals in SharePoint and Teams, to be able to integrate with the use of Gen AI, because they've already kind of built something like that and it was conflicting with the new Copilot Studio bots. So I had to work with them on, okay, well, this is what it's doing. If we want to integrate this, we need to kind of redesign how the OpenAI agents are going to work in the plugins within the new modern version of Copilot Studio chatbots. And then, it's just a learning curve. It's like, oh, okay, well, we need to adjust this, and be able to pull this information over here, but then utilize generative AI to be able to access documents within SharePoint, right? Or if we're looking at other knowledge bases or public websites, to be able to scrape and pull that information and have that nice large language model be able to respond to them as it, rather than just me typing, which I'm not super awesome on typing like very formative information. I'm about getting the data to the person and moving forward. Being able to use those GPT models to be able to pull that information and bring it back to the end user is very functional for them, and very happy to be able to use that. A lot of customers are super excited with Copilot agents, being able to create very quickly a Gen AI chatbot connected to either a SharePoint library or a specific file, or a target of sets of files, libraries, etc. Being able to do that within 2 minutes. That is super exciting for them. So it's like, well, it's getting there. It's coming. It's not there yet, but we can build agents over in Copilot Studio so that we can see how the interaction is going to be, and being able to see that, hey, I don't have to go into Azure to change API permissions to adjust, have to, mount anything together or bring any pieces together, where it truly is out of the box and somebody can just click a button and 2 minutes later have a working chat bot that they can go to production with. And we're doing that internally here at Microsoft, which I absolutely love. And my customers are super excited to see that, because that opens up the ability for them to be able to create those types of chatbots and have that type of interaction, customize those prompts, but not have to be a true full developer, right? We don't have to have any kind of special licensing other than Microsoft 365 Copilot to build those agents for them to be successful very quickly for something that needs to roll out within a week. And us as developers, especially on the customer side, they're not putting their feet to the fire to try to come up with something from scratch all by themselves.
So Nick, I loved your answer, but there was a certain part of it that caught my attention. Well, a whole lot of it, but one part in particular. Can we go back just a little bit? You mentioned customers that have already invested in AI. And I don't think this is something myself personally that I've ever considered, that if my organization has already started investing in AI, what does it look like to transition to Copilot? What are the conflicts? What's the challenges there? Are there additional costs? Is it a problem for me now to move over to this, sort of productized model that you get out of the box from Microsoft?
So for that particular customer, they have a dedicated AI team, which is exciting to see. I work mainly with education customers within the United States. And so you don't see a lot of education, universities or K through 12s that have a dedicated team for data and AI, explicitly AI. So this team, they're so far ahead of the curve on just utilizing AI, building their own AI models, that sort of thing. So they understand the cost associated over in Azure, the licensing required for the chatbot, and for them, it was a plug-in integration. What they came up to was that their AI models were doing a lot of the same things that Gen AI was doing when they wanted to just turn it on for those classic agents. And that's where they found some integration issues that they came to. Some with publication because they use DevOps for their ALM processes for rolling out updated versions and version control. So they found some issues with being able to utilize Gen AI when publishing with managed solutions. And those are the things, it's just things that weren't necessarily documented yet, but we were finding with being able to say, oh, hey, let's turn this on. Whoa, that's not going to work. It's not working in our dev environment. Let's find out why. And a lot of it was we just had to, adjust when the AI plugins were being queried against or hit because we wanted to hit those first before it failed over to Gen AI to be able to query against those data sources, the concepts of documents and Dataverse. When it's in the same environment, when we're using Gen AI, it hits all those documents, not necessarily ones explicit for those chatbots. And so they had to kind of step back and take a look and say, okay, if we have all these knowledge bases, these knowledge documents in Dataverse, and we want them targeted for specific chatbots utilizing Gen AI, we're going to have to kind of rethink our model for deployment. Because if it is truly using all the documents associated with the Dataverse, then we need to have environments targeted specifically for this chatbot. If it's just dealing with open enrollment and benefits, we don't want them to be able to, finding documents that is about IT help on how to use the procurement system when they're trying to find out how to request a new insurance card or to update my beneficiaries. Wouldn't say they were really barriers. They were just, learning curves, things that they had built custom that are now out of the box. And so they had to adjust some of their large language models over OpenAI and adjust when they're actually being called, utilizing those plugins within the normal chatbot building with various topics and things of that nature to be able to query against those so it doesn't natively fall over to Gen AI and return the wrong response.
And the end result, was it a better together story where you could see more of the first party out of the box AI working with our custom AI? Did you find in individual situations it's better as an either or? I mean, you went through this. It sounds like a kind of a painful process initially because so much of this was new and figuring it out before it was documented. For companies who are just considering taking the plunge, what are things that they should be considering?
In the beginning, you only know what you know. And so being that they built everything practically from scratch to integrate into classic Power Virtual Agents, it was just a bit of a learning curve. It was, a little bit of pain points, but, nothing was really documented on what we should expect. So they kept great notes on being able to say, hey, this is what we can do, this is what we can't do. And so what they worked with, the data and AI team, their dynamics team, and the Power Platform team came together to figure out like, hey, what's our best method for moving forward? It was really just kind of adjusting the chatbots, adjusting the application lifecycle management publication properties, right? If we have dedicated pipelines for doing things, well, we don't have the ability to change values in managed solutions on chatbots. So we can't publish them or use the pipeline to as a managed solution, at least not yet. And this was, roughly about a year ago, earlier this spring-ish, something like that, May, when we were talking about this. But things have just gotten better with that. I do have another customer that is, starting this process, right? We started with Copilot Studio, utilizing Gen AI, along with integrating with their third-party help desk system and being able to use the chatbot to be able to people to ask questions, and it captures that data, kicks off an Power Automate flow, and then it automatically kicks into integrating within their help desk system. The part that they built and used Gen AI with was the knowledge base, right? Asking them questions. Did this help? Did this help? Here's this. If you're having this problem, here's this. And use that generative AI. They started from there. And now they're moving into, hey, I want to use OpenAI because not only am I using the AI voice to be able to have a phone conversation with this chatbot, I also want to expand it to build our own large language models to be more than just phone help. I want to expand it beyond what that is. And so for him and for that customer, it's a little bit easier because myself and the data and AI architects, we on the Microsoft side, we played with this for a few months. We kind of know what the pathway is to integrate Azure OpenAI as plugins into Copilot Studio chatbots, whether it's traditional chatbots or using the voice, Azure Voice, being able to integrate like that and be able to plan and prepare our large language models and knowing that, hey, we add these in as plugins. And when we bring them in, we do them at a specific time so that we know that, hey, if we do get something that doesn't hit a topic, it's going to fail over to Gen AI. So we need to be very specific when we're, invoking those large language models and when they're invoked so that they don't automatically think it's a failover. It's actually, hey, I want to hit the Azure OpenAI model and query that and have that come back with that, have that function in there before saying, oh, hey, we couldn't find it. Let me escalate you to a person, right? Or escalate into a help desk ticket to try to help them find the answer. So I think now that we kind of know what, I'm not going to say barriers, but now that we know what we need to do to ensure that if we're doing Azure OpenAI stuff from new into already Copilot Studio chatbots, we know what those hurdles are going to be and we can sidestep them. We know that, oh, hey, it's going to automatically fail over here. So we need to adjust our topics to make sure that it actually calls the OpenAI model before it actually sees it as a failover and goes to native Gen AI.
Awesome. Thank you for all those examples. Let's talk a little bit about stickiness, right? You've made these solutions, you've worked with customers to do training days and hackathons and made all these great proof of concepts for them to get started. So you built that one solution we were talking about, like contract management and everything else. And like, after you've deployed that and put that into production, how do you ensure or how do you work towards greater adoption through the organization with low code makers? What are any tips or tricks that you could provide from your experience in the field?
So I think the biggest thing when it comes to stickiness and user adoption is to keep it simple. Obviously, branding is a big thing within education. Everybody's proud of their colors. Every corporation's proud of their colors and they want to make that. So custom branding is always helpful. But I find it that when end users are told to click here, go here, do this to be able to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they can get frustrated fairly quickly if they have 12 apps that they have to go through and they can't remember which is which. And so one of the things that I kind of suggest when, working with these, power users, these developers on the IT side of the various customers is to keep in mind that, hey, we know how this thing works. We're building it from scratch. We know what the databases do. We know how they interact. It may look great to us, but in the end, it's really who's using this. Is it a program manager? Is it a project manager? Is it a consultant? Is it a people manager? Is it someone who has 150 things to do in the first 2 hours of their day and coming to this app isn't necessarily another one that they want to do? So their experience needs to be quick and simple and to the point. So if they have to do approvals, if they have to do things, instead of having to search through emails or team invites, integrate it all into the application so they have a one-stop shop for their contracts, right? For that particular solution, whether we're inputting invoices, being able to automate that contracts are coming, they're coming due, right? They're coming up to an end, notifying those people, hey, are we extending this contract? Are you running out of money on the contract? Or are we transitioning this contract position into a full-time position at the organization? If so, integrate that with our HR process to start the process rolling for, start creating that new position and all the things that HR requires to be able to do that, but having that single point of entry to be able to answer those questions or at least start those processes and answer the questions that need to be done from one location. The other part when it comes to it is ensuring that we're using, the modern app UI. Classic builds with our classic controls are cool. They're nice. Using the modern controls and techniques allows us to give a more seamless user experience with being able to, whether we're using on a laptop or we're using on an iPhone 3. I use an iPhone 3. I'm not an Apple person. Never have. My brother loves them. But the iPhone 3 I use of his to do some testing between using an iOS versus Android versus Windows versus Mac. But it's a super small screen. So I like to see if I'm building an application, if we're using it, show me what it looks like on that super small screen. And the goal is that you don't want the experience to be dulled. We want that experience to be the same no matter where it's at. And so using the modern UI is really helpful with being able to do that. And I think the last part of this is really education, right? Change is something that is inevitable in technology. And I say this all the time, but then as I start building something, I'm like, man, why did this have to change? So embracing that, hey, change can equal frustration, but then I think also delivering it to them in a way that, hey, yes, this is a change. It is different, but let me show you how it's better. And educating users to be able to say, hey, here's this new application. Well, I like the old one. Well, the old one was built on, on sitting on an AS400 back in, 2007. So yes, we're used to that, but let me show you how it's better, because now we're not clicking 45 times. We're only clicking 6. Oh, that's pretty cool. And you can access it on your phone. The other one, yeah, you couldn't. You had to be logged into a VPN. You had to do this, had to do that. Now we can just do it directly from wherever you are, logged in with your work or school account. And so I think those are the 3 points for stickiness that I found with customers to be able to help them along that part of the journey, because people do get frustrated. Oh my gosh, another thing that I have to click on, but this one thing replaces 7 that you had to click on before, and helps them like, oh, okay, well then it's not that bad. And yeah, this looks kind of neat. And I automatically get notifications when something is becoming due. And the link that I get from my email brings me right back to this app. So I don't have to go click on something else. Another browser type opens up, comes right to the app, and I'm able to say, yes, I approve that, or no, you need to make changes on this document. And it's all done within the app, and it's not done through 40 different other things that they might have had to do in a previous rendition of that legacy profile.
So, Nick, first off, again, we love your answers. Sounds like you are not passionate about this at all, and you've never done this. This is your first day here. With that said, I'm a little curious about these organizations and their transitions. So now, you've talked about hackathons and those sort of educating the user base. But I'm also curious to know, how do we sort of help customers or encourage customers to find areas of opportunity to use AI and Copilot and so on within their organization? Because some of these folks that we have just customers, excuse me when I say folks, have just loads and loads of knowledge. You could have someone that has been in the organization 20, 30 years, but they might be super resistant to change. But there's a tremendous opportunity to learn from them and then take that and then, I don't want to say automate their processes, but use AI to enhance their knowledge and so on. I think that's a little bit of my question right there before I start rambling on.
Clarify it again, Ken.
How do we help customers find areas of opportunity within their organization using their subject matter experts that they have today who are resistant to AI?
That is a very difficult question to ask, especially doing with the Power Platform, but then just thinking about Copilot in general. The biggest thing is using it. Personally, I'm the same way. Like, yay, we have Copilot. I don't need Copilot to help me draft an email. I'm totally proficient in doing that myself, right? But what I've found to kind of help me, and what I've seen that's helping our customers, is the Copilot deliveries and things like that, to teach people how to use it, how to drive adoption. Setting up a center of excellence for Copilot, meaning, a place for all these Copilot users to come in and ask questions, having like biweekly or weekly town hall type meetings to be able to ask questions to other users. Like, hey, did you see this prompt that I used? I saw this, in a blog or on a video, or I heard this on national office hours, that I saw this. Like, have you seen this? Like, look at what it does. What I've found is that people using it and talking about it drives other people to use it and talk about it, because you only kind of know what you know. If I go to a meeting for 2 hours, that's cool. I still go back to my desk and I don't really think about it. One of the ways that I use Copilot within my meetings with all of my customers, whether I'm dedicated to them or it's a one-off, when they ask me a question and I'm usually sharing my screen, I was like, I don't know. And it's absolutely okay for us engineers to say we don't know. But usually the next line is, let's ask Copilot. And I will pull up Copilot and type in the same question and get the answer. Right. And these are customers that, they don't have Microsoft 365 Copilot, but we do have Copilot available to our end users without that particular license via office.com. Right. And so come here, ask it the question. And I've come to the point over the last 6 months of, I'm no longer going to search engines to look up answers to questions. I'm going to Copilot. The ability, seeing someone actually create a Microsoft form in the middle of a Teams meeting to get feedback from that meeting in less than a minute. Super exciting to see that. Like, I didn't even know you could do that. And so when it comes to integrating like AI within their everyday lives, I think it's work lives anyway. I think it's about showing them how to use it and how to use it effectively. And more specifically, like, instead of pulling up Bing or pulling up Google or pulling up Alta Vista, big fan of Ask Jeeves, to ask a question, ask Copilot, because you can ask it the question. You can be as vague or it's detailed. The more detailed, the better, the prompts, right? But the thing is that it's going to ask it's natural language. It's going to put it in a bulleted list on pros and cons if you're looking for that, and give you direct links to where it found it, whether it's a YouTube video, a blog post, a learn documentation in Microsoft, and you can click directly from there. Seeing the power of being able to get your answer without having to scroll through multiple pages and click through has been my showing to customers of how powerful Copilot is as a tool in my everyday work, whether I'm developing something brand new from scratch or I'm helping people troubleshoot issues that they're running into. And when they see that and they hear me say this over and over, well, let's ask Copilot. And it makes them think like, hey, you know what? I call Microsoft when I have a problem and he's using Copilot to find the answer. Let me try that first before I reach out to Nick. And that's what I'm seeing with on the developer side for various customers of, oh yeah, let's try this. Other customers that do have Copilot licenses are using them. They use them, but they think it's more a lot truly focused on Microsoft 365 apps. So they're thinking Word, Excel, PowerPoint, being able to do things in Outlook, being able to build PowerPoint presentations based off 3 or 4 different files. Like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Do I do that every day? No, I really don't. But what I do is I've like, hey, you know what? I've got this massive technical documentation. Summarize this in one page. And it gives it to me to the high key points with taglines where I can click and go directly to that location in the document to read more detailed information. Seeing how that's useful and it's showing that to our customers makes them think, oh, hey, that could help me too. Didn't even think about using it in that manner. And that's what I'm seeing from a lot of customers. Is it something that's game changing? It can be. But the thing is, it's about having that conversation with more than just yourself or more than just your team, using it in meetings, talking about it out loud. Well, let's ask Copilot. Sounds silly to say that out loud when it's just you and me, right? 2 people. When I talk, hey, let's ask Copilot. They're like, dang it, I should have done that. Well, let's do it together. Let's see what you get versus what I get back, right?
Oh, you're speaking my heart language here, Nick, because this is, I'm all about the prompting. I'm all about Copilot. And I was taken last year from Power Platform, sadly, and asked to be moved over fully to Copilot there too. So I'm totally in agreement. One other quick thing that I'm seeing on the field and with customers is customers tend to think Copilot is just the buttons that they see. So click the summarize button or the recap button, and they're not they're seeing what pops up in Copilot Lab, and they're not thinking about the prompt engineering. And a point I want to make, and then unfortunately our producer is giving me the hook a little bit to say we need to land this thing. One thing I'm also seeing, and I think this is a parallel, maybe you've seen it too, between low code and Copilot and AI, is the fact that the real struggle is how to think about your work differently. How do I delegate? How do I automate? It's not necessarily about how to use the tool. And so that's where even our roles have come in and asked, well, why are you doing it this way? Or asking some of those probing questions or, to get people to realize that there's a different way to accomplish the same thing. I'm sure you've experienced that as well. I'll be honest with you. I was tempted to let you keep going because I feel like you're a captive audience, but I know you have other customer meetings today. So I want to be kind to you and give you a little bit of a break before those meetings. But any closing thoughts or anything that we didn't cover that you want to just make sure our audience hears before we wrap up?
I don't think so. We hit on a lot of great topics, a lot of great ideas. Stickiness is always a big thing with our customers and the utilization of Copilot, right? With building Power Platform solutions, I love it when I build Copilot Studio chatbots with Copilot. So much easier to do it that way. But no, I appreciate you guys having me here and being able to talk about how our customers are actually utilizing Power Platform, utilizing AI, trying to integrate in their everyday lives, in their everyday work lives anyway.
Awesome. Well, I think we probably have about 3 more episodes worth of content that we need to get to with you.
Awesome.
So we're definitely bringing you back.
All right. Thank
But
you.
thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.